Welcome back to Half A Hot Rods. We were very excited. We got the tires put on Chesney's Beach Rod, and of course on the way home it started making weird clunking noises from the rear end. So we had to dig into that and see what we could find. We thought maybe the C-clip rear end was failing, the clips or the pin that they sit up against. Did a little internet research to figure that much out. Got it home, tore it apart. Let me show you what we found. So we tore it apart to check that pin, check the C-clips. That's what these are that you're looking at. There's lots of videos about C-clip axles and how to get them out and check them. Everything looked good. We were twisting things around to kind of put it back together and clean up. Didn't really see any metal in the fluid or anything. And when we moved the tires a little bit, this little fella decided to tumble into the bottom of the differential. And I don't know anything about rear differentials inside. I, kind of almost understand where, the driveline goes in one end and the axles go out the sides, and, that's how the power gets to the ground. And if everything's not set up perfect, then nothing works right and it makes noise and tears things up. And that's what I know. So I went in and watched a bunch of videos until I finally stumbled across what this probably was. And it is a little spacer, or a bushing actually, that's supposed to ride behind this side gear that goes in the middle of the differential. You can see the other one on the other side there. So we had to pull the posi, part of the posi out, the spring deal here that everything falls out of if you pick it up, so I'm not going to pick it up. Again, there's videos on how to pull that apart. So we got that out of there. But in order to get that out of there, first we had to get the ring gear off, which it turns out has left-hand threaded bolts. And that's what they look like. The one on the right is what it looks like when you take it out knowing it's left-hand thread. The one on the left is what it looks like when you take it out not knowing it's left-hand thread. So we've still got an issue to deal with there and get that drilled out and make sure we clean up the threads. And now we have to find a specialty left-hand thread bolt to go back in there. Inside here, we thought we'd find the rest of that bushing. And I think we did. It's kind of hard to see. I'll get the light on it. But it looks like some of that's painted and some of it's not. But really, that's just bushing turned into paste. So that's really not cool at all. Or glitter, I mean, if that's what you're into. So now we got to go try and hunt parts and see if we can get it all put back together and make it go again without making god-awful noises or exploding. So wish us luck. Well, the good news is I was able to weld. Yep, that's nice booger welds right there. But I welded a nut onto that broken bolt in the ring gear and gave it a little heat, and it just twisted right out of there. So on the second try. So that worked almost just the way I wanted it to. We were able to find ring gear bolts at the local four-wheel drive shop, and the little bushings, the little flat washers I showed you before, they had those. They were actually really cool. They pulled them out of a new setup kit, ordered the individual parts from the manufacturer, and sold me the stuff out of their kit. So I thought that was kind of awesome. Got it all put back together. We fought with it and wrestled with it, and we got it all back in, all the posis back in the way it's supposed to go, as far as I know. Everything feels like it's fitting good and moving right. We went to slide it back up in there, and I was wiping everything down, and I think you'll see it on camera there. This is the inside of the bearing for the carrier, and it's supposed to be shiny and smooth like that area. Real pretty. And it's not. It looks like somebody sandblasted it, or it rusted, or who knows. But that's not good. So it undoubtedly chewed up the rollers. So we went ahead and pulled it off. I don't have the right tool for it, so my puller just destroyed this cage that holds all the roller bearings in. We don't need those. We're not going to get a new bearing anyway. So I ended up cutting and hacking and beating on it with a cutoff wheel and an air hammer, and eventually she just slid right off there. So now we'll take this in. We can look it up by application. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's also numbers on there. So we make sure we get the right one. And then we'll have to get it pressed back on, which is another challenge because that's another tool I don't have. So we'll either find a shop to press it on for us, phone a friend. I've got a buddy down the road that I would almost bet has a press. I think we're going to find out. And we'll go from there. Hopefully we'll be coming back to tell you it's back on the road. Okay, we got Chesney's Beach Rod all back together. It's running and driving. It appears everything's working. We did hit some more bumps along the way. I told you about the bearing. We got that replaced. Went to put it back together. We knew we had a leaky wheel cylinder for the brakes, which should be a pretty simple job. But as it turned out, the brake line broke at one end when we disconnected it, this hard line. And then it didn't want to come apart on the other end from the rubber hose. So we had to pull the rubber hose off. And then once we did that, we noticed that the hose was turning inside this crimp, which shouldn't happen. So we were worried about it leaking. So we replaced those pieces. I think that's about it. It was a pain in the neck, but we got everything filled back up. Again, I want to show you the tools I used. Obviously, some of the air tools make it easier. This impact, and I've got another little one that I run 3/8 with, makes things easier, but you could easily do that stuff with a ratchet. So basic sockets, a few wrenches. I had a couple end wrenches out. Oh, they're sitting up here. Pliers, vice grips, handful of screwdrivers. When I busted that bolt going the wrong way, I had to drill some of that out. And a good way to measure your depth, because the threads don't go all the way through that, obviously, is to set it in the hole of one that you didn't break off like a dummy and put a piece of tape around your drill bit to make sure you don't drill all the way through and get into stuff that doesn't need to be drilled. So we got vice grips. No idea where the big bolt came from. Must be a different project. But the stuff that not everybody has that I used on this one for that bearing was the air hammer and the cutoff wheel. Neither one of those are super expensive anymore. If you're not using them every day to make your living, you can buy a cheap one and be just fine with it. Cheap things that do make life a lot easier. This is like a $6 pump. Don't get me wrong, it works like a $6 pump. Not great, but it is better than just sticking a hose on the end of this guy and squeezing your gear oil back into the rear end that way. We used a bunch of brake clean, brake fluid. With the old cars we have, I just buy the big container every time. I don't believe it goes bad, so it can sit there until I use it all, and then I don't run out. Total investment in this job that kind of went sideways on us. The thrust bushings and ring gear bolts were about 20 bucks. Like I said, the 4x4 shop pulled those out of a new kit, which was pretty darn good customer service. And I'll get their name and put it in the comments. Differential bearing was another 25 bucks. Wheel cylinder was 15. Brake hose was 16. And that hard line was 12 bucks. The one I bought, you can bend by hand. You don't need a special tool to bend it. So it's awesome. So when you're looking for that stuff, call around. It's so much easier to work with. Get that stuff that you can bend by hand. Fluids, gear oil, posi additive. Those were around 20 bucks. Brake clean, I bought 4 cans at Walmart for 8 bucks. Silicone, I always figure a tube for about 6, because more than likely by the time I go to use it, it's going to be bad what's left. So I always figure a full tube for whatever job I'm doing. And I've mentioned these before, and I can't say enough about them. I got these little magnetic lights as a gift, and I guess they got them at the Home Depot, and they're fantastic. They're just awesome to have because they can stick anywhere you want under the car, you know, as long as it's not aluminum or so covered in crud that you can't get to it anymore. So Everything is back together. We test drove it and it didn't fall apart or make any terrible noises. So we'll hope that it's fixed and get on to the next project. Remember, if I can do it, you can do it.